I was in Puerto Rico 2 consecutive years for a particular broker-dealer out east, and they had me do sort of a pre-President's Club speech before they gave out awards. And so the second year I was there, I'm sitting at the table with the president of the firm and some of the senior executives, and when they came to announce number one, they had 100, and I want to say the top 100 out of 1,600. And when they came to number one, it was the same gentleman who was number one the year before. So I turned to the president of the firm and I said, wow, that's pretty impressive, 2 years in a row. And he said, try 11. I said, well, now I'm really impressed. And he said, not only is he number one, he laps number two. I said, oh, now I'm intimidated, impressed. So I sought John out after the meeting, and I said, hey, John, I said, really, really impressed with what you've done. I said, is there any way I could cajole you into having dinner with me tomorrow night? He said, would love it. I said, good. I said, now I'm going to take the liberty of giving you a homework assignment for dinner. I said, I'd like you to try to reduce your success down to one word. He said, okay, I'll give it a shot. He was a very humble fella. And so we came to dinner the next night, and he's with his wife, and we're standing in line to get into the restaurant. And he said, well, Mitch, he said, it took me all of 45 seconds. But he said, I can't thank you enough for asking. And I want you to just underscore that phrase, I can't thank you enough for asking, because that's sort of the driving theme of this morning that I want to share with you. When you ask a good question, they're thankful you asked. Isn't that the truth? They're thankful you asked, because the question, a lot of us think questions are designed to get answers, but questions are actually good questions. I run a question laboratory. Here's what good questions do first. They cause people to think in ways they haven't thought before. They make connections in people's brains. They get people to process what's going on and see patterns. That's what good questions do first and foremost. Secondarily, or maybe in a tertiary fashion, they provide us with answers we're looking for. This industry has shot far too low with the questions it asks, and I'll talk more about this later. But so often this industry prescribes questions that are designed to get the answer you wanted to hear so you could say what you planned on saying. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not a question, that's a sales pitch. Let's never mix the two up. Well, he said, I can't thank you enough for asking. Now, I know we've got a lot of star power in this room and a lot of intelligence in this room. But if I gave everybody in this room a guess as to his one-word answer, there's a chance, a pretty good chance, we wouldn't come up with a word. If you'd have given me 30 guesses, I wouldn't have come up with a word. It wasn't one of those Tony Robbins lexicon words that you expect to hear, that motivational midnight, DVD set words. It wasn't any of those words. I bet you're curious about the word. Well, the word was curiosity. He said, I never really even thought about it until you asked me. But he said, I think it has to be because of my curiosity. He said, I just can't help myself. When I meet people, I just have to know, where are you from? And what was it like growing up there? And what did your mom and dad do? And how many brothers and sisters did you have? And where'd you go to school? And what did you want to be when you're growing up? And did you work any jobs? And then how'd you end up where you were? And where are your friends? And how'd you meet your mate? And how'd your career get started? And then how did it change? And how'd you get from there to here? And where were the kids born? And he said, I can't stop. I just can't stop myself. I just have to know. He says, I'm not comfortable till I know who they are. And he said, you know what he said? I just realized after telling you this, he said, I've never asked for a referral in my life. Anybody home, or should I knock on the door again? Why doesn't that just fly in the face of industry protocol? You know, I'm from Rochester, Minnesota, home of the Mayo Clinic. How many of you heard of the Mayo Clinic? Well, they do a pretty good job at the Mayo Clinic, and there's a story out of the Mayo Clinic I love to tell along these lines about, I have cardiac surgeons on both sides of me, and there was a cardiac surgeon that performed surgery on this fellow, and he was in trouble, and the very next day he goes into his room to see how his patient's doing, and the patient's like, "Doctor, I cannot believe how much better I feel already. Truly, I don't know how to thank you." And the doctor said, "Well, do you have any friends or family members that could benefit from the same procedure?" Gosh, it's nice to have an audience that's this awake this early. That kind of cuts to the nature of it all, doesn't it? You know, when you do a really great job at what you do, and when you bring the essence of who you are, and people know you really care, there's no begging involved.